if they can set up Xiaohu with counter picks, get him on things like the Lucian and the Jace himself in good matchups, they'll be in a really good standing. If they can get Kai'Sa for Gala, that'll be really great. And then also just neutral matchups in that mid lane.
Hi everyone, it's Tom, and this is the first interview I'll be doing ramping up to MSI, and I'll be interviewing experts from all regions attending MSI, talking about the teams they are sending to Iceland to compete for that coveted trophy. And as my first guest for the interview, it's LPL caster Munchables. How are you doing, man?
Hello, yeah, I'm doing all right, mate. How are you doing?
I've been doing okay. Yeah, very much looking forward to MSI, of course. It's bound to be a banger with the teams attending. So yeah, we are going to be talking about RNG, obviously the champions of the LPL, toppling FPX in the finals, but we'll get to that. But before we talk about anything that happened in the season, obviously RNG was a team that missed out on playing on the international stage at Worlds, didn't attend there last year. So I don't think many people will have followed them last year, especially maybe in the Western regions. So can you tell me, heading into 2021, were there any big shakeups in the roster? Were there any major changes to the organization?
Yeah, big time. So for anyone that doesn't know, the top laner for RNG, a guy called Xiaohu, you've probably heard his name before if you followed International League of Legends. But if you haven't, for anyone that's been living under a rock, Xiaohu has been on RNG since, I want to say 2015. It might have been 2016. But regardless, he was a mid laner for a long time. He was a mid laner when Uzi was on the team. But then this year, he swapped into the top lane. And so for power rankings coming into this year were all over the place where RNG were being placed. Some people were saying, yeah, it's going to be a big success. Most people were saying they couldn't find a good top laner. This is the halfway house. Like, they'll figure it out in summer, was kind of the vibe. That's certainly what I expected coming into the year. Turns out Xiaohu's pretty good at top lane.
Yeah.
It's been a really weird year in that regard. But they have Cryan and Wei, who were of E-Star fame back at the start of spring last year, if anyone remembers that. And then Ming is still on the team, and Gala, who's an AD carry that we're on. He's basically on a couple of pretty crappy teams and they got picked up by RNG, and now he's had an unbelievable pop-off finals. So had a bit of a rough split overall, but now looking really good going from finals.
Yeah, and you mentioned those power rankings. That's something I wanted to touch on as well, because I always think of the LPL, and I think the LPL has proven to be a pretty volatile region, not just in terms of games, but also when it comes to to power dynamic shifts. We saw, for example, FunPlus Phoenix win Worlds, but then not even attending Worlds the year after. So things like that change continuously. So you'd say that RNG was all over the place in terms of how its roster would shake up as well then?
Yeah, well, it was, excuse me, it was kind of a weird season because going in, I didn't expect much of RNG, but then they came out of the gate swinging. They had these weird flex picks where Xiaohu was playing like Syndra top and Tristana top and Orianna top, like really weird stuff. He tried a bit of Malphite. It looked really terrible. He tried a bit of Sion. It looked really terrible. And then he found Gnar, and Gnar was like the gift from God that got them many wins. Yeah, exactly. So RNG were actually in first place for the majority of the split. I think they lost it for like 1 or 2 weeks, but ultimately finished in first from the regular split. So going into playoffs, everyone was like, hey, on paper, RNG is a favorite. And there was a couple of people saying that things would go a different way. I didn't actually predict RNG being the champion. I thought that they would be toppled by JDG just on top difference, because Zoom is a monster. I'll not go down into that rabbit hole because I was wrong anyway. But RNG then enter playoffs, and the format for playoffs was basically there was 10 teams in playoffs. The first 8 teams play through a gauntlet. Like obviously by seeding as is classic in the LPL, and then the top 4, the top 2 from the gauntlet, and then the top 2 seeded from the regular season play a double elimination 4-team bracket, right? So coming into that double elimination, RNG were supposedly the favorites. They got 3-0 spanked by FPX, and then had this like grueling task of making it through the lower bracket and made an absolute meal of it as well. Like they looked, I'm not going to lie, they looked terrible in the series against FPX. And then in the series versus versus EDG. Honestly, I think EDG should have won that series.
Mm-hmm.
EDG really, really messed up the first two games
Mm-hmm.
and kind of, I'm not gonna lie, they kind of gave RNG that series on the platter. So going into the finals, I was like, there's no way this team wins. It's not possible. I can't even envision it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they somehow made it happen. They managed to spank FPX. It was a banger series, but Gala especially, he looked like a different player in that final to basically the entire year leading up to
Yeah.
that or the entire split leading up to that final. It was a really weird progression for the team, but it feels like if they could do that finals form, they're really good.
Right.
The question is if they can do that finals form again.
Right. I think we'll touch on the individual players definitely, but I think many people will remember the pentakill, obviously, of Gala. That was a standout moment. But throughout the spring split, when you have a team that's undergoing change, especially a player switching roles, that's an identity shift, not just for the player but for the team. How would you say this team's identity developed over the course of the split? Did they find a particular style? You mentioned weird flex picks at the start. Or is it something that continued to change all throughout the season?
So it did change a few times, and I would say they finished on a different identity to how they started.
Mm-hmm.
For the vast majority of the split, it was get a good pick for Xiaohu, play through Xiaohu. So like we'd see Cryan. Cryan is not the strongest laner. Honestly, Cryan is not even top 4 in terms of mid lanes, in my opinion, in the LPL.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a similar story to like if you think back to when FPX won the World Championship. A lot of people were saying about Doomby how he wasn't that strong of a laner, but he could get out of the lane and influence the other lanes. Well, it was kind of a similar story for RNG where Cryan was much more interested in playing towards Xiaohu. So you'd see Cryan away often roaming up, going for 3-man dives against whoever Xiaohu's against in the top side.
Mm-hmm.
Xiaohu definitely got significantly better at so Xiaohu was already mechanically great, right? That wasn't ever the issue for him in the top lane, but quite a few times it felt like he was not used to playing top lane as a lane, because like top lane's a lot longer than mid lane is. You can be more aggressive in mid lane a lot of the time and get away with it, whereas top lane, if you overextend or you like try and break a freeze by yourself and you're not sure where the enemy jungler is in professional play, you're going to get punished like 10 times out of 10 for that. So it felt like there was a few times where we were seeing that kind of thing earlier on in the split, less so towards the end, but still there is a little bit of that still there. But because of the way the team was playing through him, that weakness was very much covered up, because so often you'd have Wei and it'd be a 2v2 rather than him getting caught out, right? But as we got to playoffs, it felt like, I don't know, it's really hard to criticize because it worked, right?
But you can still be critical of the way things happen,
Like, the way I saw it was, hey, play through Xiaohu, that's the way that you guys win. That's the reason that RNG is a really good team right now. But when we got into playoffs, and especially that first FPX series, they basically just left Xiaohu alone. He got nuggeried, and they were trying to play through Gala, and Gala was just not performing at all. And one of the kind of storylines around Gala this year has been that he's bit of a Kai'Sa one trick, decent on the Xayah as well. And then once you go beyond that, it gets a little sus, I'm not going to lie. So it felt like in playoffs, they tried actively to change their identity away from just playing through Xiaohu. And there were some games where they played through Xiaohu, but certainly in the finals, that wasn't the same version of RNG, right? We saw Gala being really the star of the show in a lot of these games. And there were still moments where Xiaohu was the guy that they had to win through. But it does feel like this is now a team that has multiple styles. I don't think that they've lost the ability to play through Xiaohu. But if they get something like the Kai'Sa, Gala can definitely be a win condition for this team now, which I honestly think going into MSI is a good thing, because having one strategy can often fall short. But then again, LPL teams with one strategy that are really good at it have both won the World Championship. So, you know.
Yeah, so, and obviously finding a strategy is obviously very meta dependent. If you can find something that is, for all we know, if you say, okay, Gala is very good at a Kai'Sa, maybe Kai'Sa is not going to be very prevalent on patch 11.9. Obviously, that's something we'll have to see. So let's talk about some of the weaknesses of this team that they might have heading into MSI and playing against the likes of, well, everybody's going to be looking at Damon Key, obviously, but you're representing Mad Lions. Cloud9 is representing LCS. PSG Talon, who played at Worlds last year, is making it again. So heading into MSI, what do you think potential hurdles could be for a team like RNG?
I definitely think mid lane will be a potential issue, right? As I mentioned, Cryan not the strongest laner in the world.
Mm-hmm.
The mid laners that will be able to punish him is mid laners that are looking to be aggressive in the 1v1. Now, conveniently for RNG, the meta right now, and whether it will stay the same for MSI is a different question, but the meta right now is a lot of Victor, a lot of Orianna, a lot of things that don't, unless you're rookie, don't really punish that lane 1v1 super hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like Cryan, if he can get things like the Victor, should be able to sort of just chill out in a lot of those lanes and farm it up and then play towards the rest of the win condition. The other concern I have is the 2v2 down in the bottom side from Gala and Ming was, I guess the word is inconsistent, where sometimes it looked great, but quite often those moments where they were getting ahead in the lane was more an issue of LWX and Crisp running it a bit in the bottom lane, as opposed to Ming and Gala getting advantages themselves. So I do worry if RNG put all of their eggs in the Gala basket again against, I was going to say stronger botlane 2v2s. LWX and Crisp look good all year. I don't know what happened in the final, but yeah, against stronger botlane 2v2s, that could be an issue as well if there are other teams that do draft to win lane, like these Samira Alistair kind of lanes that really want to dominate, or Callistas. We see quite a few Callistas around the world, so it's possible that could be a weakness as well. Xiaohu blind picking Gnar is a thing that happens all the time.
He did that a few times, I saw in the playoffs as well, to the befuddlement of the casters. But
I hate it.
Is it one of those things again where you're like, yeah, it works, so can you really criticize it? But yes, you probably should criticize it.
The thing is, often it doesn't work, because the thing about the LPL is we have very, very confident players, right? And it feels like things like Jace are picks that a lot of regions are not confident in picking at all. But Jace has a really good matchup into Gnar. Most of the top laners in the LPL are more than happy to go for a Jace, because I think top lane is definitely seen as a carry role a lot of the time in the LPL, or by certain LPL teams at very least. And so Jace very much fits into that, and the teams are quite happy to draft things like the Zoe and then the Varus or something like that, and just go for a ranged comp, which is something that you see less, I think, in other regions, which, that's a very big blanket statement. I'm sure we do see it a bit, but quite often you'll just see tanks at the top lane in other regions. So I think the Gnar can be punished very heavily by the right teams. And so RNG discovered that in playoffs, right? Where they were just blinding the Gnar and getting absolutely fisted. So I do think that's an issue. I feel like they figured that out now, though. I do feel like that was the learning curve during playoffs, so I'm really hoping that won't be the case. Plus, again, it'll be a different patch, so maybe Gnar's not as good. I'm not really sure. I've not looked at the patch for MSI, so I don't know what the meta's going to be like. But yeah, I would say if they can set up Xiaohu with counter picks, get him on things like the Lucian and the Jace himself in good matchups, they'll be in a really good standing. If they can get Kai'Sa for Gala, that'll be really great. And then also just neutral matchups in that mid lane. But priority picks for Wei will be a big thing. If Wei can be on things like the Hecarim, Wei's Olaf also, Wei's Lilia, really, really good. So I feel like it's very much a matter of this team is fairly good at the standard way of playing when it comes to like the bot lanes, the mid lanes, the jungle. And then Xiaohu is kind of the wild card when it comes to picks, and it's all about getting him the counter pick and setting him up for success.
Yeah, so I think many people will expect RNG to make it out of the groups, especially now that, unfortunately, GAM Esports as the VCS representative will not be attending. But there is Unicorns of Love and Pentanet in their group, which are minor regions. And while, nothing bad on them in terms of how well prepared they're going to be for MSI, but in terms of level of play, obviously these teams have historically proven not to be as good as LPL teams, let alone the top seed of the LPL heading into it. So when they get past that group stage, do you think that this team will be able to learn a lot from that international experience and maybe already scrimming against these other teams? Or is this a team that's going to keep on doing its own thing throughout the tournament?
So it's a really good question. I definitely think that they will have to, because teams like Damwon are obviously very intelligent in the way that they draft and play the game. So I certainly think that's the kind of team that will punish RNG if they don't adapt. I do think that when you look at the way that they played in playoffs, right? One of the big conversations that I know Lyric was a big proponent of this, was that RNG changed the way that they were playing, right? And started playing towards Gala. And there's kind of a speculation there that, hey, maybe things were going wrong in scrims. And one thing that people often forget is that the Korean teams and the Chinese teams can scrim each other. Like, they're close enough that that's doable. So there's a speculation there that maybe they were playing through Xiaohu in the way that they had all split, and it wasn't working in scrims, and they were losing with that style in scrims, and so they felt that they were forced to change style. So I think if you subscribe to that speculation, it's very safe to assume that they are a team that will be quite happy to adapt. The fact that they started this split with a mid laner playing top, literally playing mid lane picks, and then Gnar became his most played champion, still thinks like I don't count out any of the spicy picks, but it does feel like Xiaohu has become a top laner over the course of this split. So I do think that this is a team that can adapt. My only concern is if the meta adapts in a way where Cryan has to be a big carry force on the team, or Kai'Sa gets nerfed in a big way and is no longer really the premier carry that she is right now. That's where I have a couple of question marks around RNG on if they can adapt in that way.
Okay, thank you so much for joining me, Munchables. I think many eyes will be on RNG heading into the tournament. I think that Damwon and RNG are probably the two favorites heading into it. I'm not sure how you feel about that.
Yeah, I would say RNG Damwon is like comfortably the most likely final, based on what I've seen of the other regions. But I definitely think there are a couple of teams that could throw a curveball in there. Mad Lions, certainly. I'm excited to see those early games. I am good.
Very
explosive. Get to see Vietnam in, because Vietnam's like the most aggressive region. I would have loved to see like Mad Lions versus Vietnam, RNG versus Vietnam. Like that, I think those would have been bangers.
Yeah.
But, I am good about that one. But yeah, overall, I would definitely say RNG. One of the big favorites going into the tournament. That one do look scary, but it's always hard to call going in. I feel like RNG, Xiaohu might be able to top gap Khan. I'm not gonna lie. If RNG could play through Xiaohu, that could be the way that they win out that series.
That is a statement, because Khan
he's only just started playing top as well. I know how crazy that sounds, but
yeah, I mean he has looked incredibly good, and obviously that is a matchup many people will be looking forward to. So again, thank you so much for joining me, Munchables, and I look forward to seeing the coverage you might be bringing. Can you say something like that already about MSI or?
I have heard nothing, so.
Oh, okay. Well, undoubtedly we'll see you interact with the tournament. I'm looking forward to seeing your hot takes as usual. Thank you again so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
And enjoy the tournament as well.
Yeah, will do. You too. And I'll be watching your coverage as well, because I love your interviews. So thanks very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.